It's going to hit record in a second.
It's
All right,
recording.
so yeah. So do you see it now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's recording.
Okay. All right. So thank you for joining today, Chris Bruce. And Bruce, I'm also talking to you on Instagram. Instagram Live as well. So you'll see me alternate up and down a bit. All right. So
sounds good to me.
Yeah. So thank you for tuning in today. It is April 20th. For a lot of people, this is 420. It is a celebration for many people. And considering the state of the world right now, this is definitely a time for some people to celebrate. And so we're going to talk about marijuana. I asked Chris Bruce, who is a superstar at the ACLU of Georgia, if you name a fight politically over the last couple of years that's involved the civil liberties or the rights of people in the state of Georgia, from the heartbeat ban to various immigration things to various lawsuits against the Trump administration, he has been pretty much on the front lines representing for people that he'll never meet. And so it's a good time to talk to somebody like this, especially today, who's slowly venturing into a new space of advocacy, which is the marijuana advocacy side of what could be potentially something that's happening in the state of Georgia. So I'm going to let Chris Bruce first introduce himself. And so, Bruce, can you let people know a little bit about yourself?
Happy to be here. Thank you, Mr. Williams, for inviting me to this podcast, especially on this critical topic. And the reason why I say that is because, again, working with other social justice groups throughout my years of being here, I've noticed that there's some topics that are more popular than other topics. And I think that if we can get education out, which leads to advocacy, which could eventually lead to change. But basically, I'm Christopher Bruce, political director, proud graduate of Georgia State University for my undergrad, and a proud graduate of the University of Georgia for law school.
Okay. I want to take a quick pause for a second. We'll still be recording, but Bruce, is your phone with you? Because I want to also add you in on the Instagram live feed as well.
My phone is on me, yes.
Yeah, because I'm going to try to add you if you're on.
Yeah. What do I need to do? I just need to go on.
Yeah, you can see mine. It should pop up for a second, then I'll just add you from there, because there's just a few people who are not on Zoom who are trying to listen in as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the reason why I brought this up today is that for a host of reasons right now, we're looking at a potential where over the next year or two, we're going to see a lot of changes in regards to marijuana in the state of Georgia. In particular, what does that mean for Georgians? What does that mean for Black people and people of color who want to get into the marijuana space? And more importantly, what does that mean for people who've been incarcerated for marijuana and now are being essentially like locked up for something that people are going to be entrepreneurial about? And so I want to start out with you first. On the first thing is, can you explain this offline? What is the difference between decriminalization and legalization?
Good. I'm glad that's exactly where we need to start too, because a lot of people get these types of terms confused altogether. So decriminalization, legalization, and what I'll put out is a more ambiguous term of reclassification, because that's what happens when all this happens together. Decriminalization is basically what it says. You are decriminalizing something. So typically in our system of justice, you have things that are legal, you have things that are civil. If you decriminalize something, that means it is no longer a crime. So there's a lot of things that are not, that are decriminalized. So like cutting your grass right now, you can get a fine if your grass or your lawn is not cut. That is just a civil ordinance fine. There's no criminal penalties into that. That is not handled by your prosecutor or anything else. You just have to pay a county some money or some authority. That's decriminalized altogether. What we have right now is a system where things are being reclassified. So when the city of Atlanta issued a fine for having marijuana possession, it's still a crime. You can still have a criminal record for it. So it's not completely decriminalized. It's just be reclassified and to the point where you no longer have jail time. Well, you can no longer be sentenced to jail. You can still be arrested and booked into jail and then bailed out. But for the most part, that's the difference between decriminalization and reclassification. And most importantly is where Georgia needs to be going, legalization. So if it's legal, that means that you are able to still do it within the confines of certain things which you would put in the legislation. So like I was saying before, in Colorado, they pushed for legalization of recreational marijuana, but it was only to a certain amount. You only had to do it with certain dispensaries who had a license to distribute. If you were outside of that scope, it was still illegal, so you wouldn't be able to, so there were still people who were actually getting arrested. But it's these type of terms that are important so that people know what they're actually advocating for. So you tell someone that you're just decriminalizing something, that's great, but you also need to push for legalization. And make sure you stay away from saying something is decriminalized, I can't speak, decriminalized, when it's really not decriminalized. It's just been reclassified to a lower order.
Okay, so does that mean what we've seen kind of with the city of Atlanta when they said they were going to decriminalize marijuana? Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that is a pure example of what I'm saying. It's not decriminalized. It is still a crime in the city of Atlanta to have marijuana.
Okay.
It is still a crime. Now, you cannot have jail time sentenced to you, but to go through the whole process, a police officer says you have marijuana, they arrest you, they book you, they take a mug shot of you, and then you can get bailed out or you can get released on a signature bond. That's what typically happens.
Okay, so what does that mean with a signature bond?
So a signature bond is basically that you are really signing over your signature. You have to have some, what they like to call skin in the game, of saying you are going to show up to court to answer to a judge and a prosecutor based on the charges that are against you. Instead of you putting up cash or collateral, you're basically put up your name of saying, I will show up on this date. And I'm signing my name to that.
Okay. And so now I want to ask you one thing first. Check your Instagram thing again, Bruce. I think we like messed up a little bit on the connection part of it. Try it again. And while we're doing that, I do want to next jump on.
Do I just need to click on your live feed? Or?
Yeah. Okay. And it should, both of us should be able to, I should pull you up as soon as you pull up.
Okay. Do you see I just joined?
Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, okay, now wait, you see a request that says add? I'm trying to add you, like.
Okay.
All right, did you hit it?
Yep.
All right, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna talk to you up here through Zoom, now through the regular phone. Hey, there's some people. Yeah, I look at both.
We're not having a baby face Teddy Riley.
No Teddy Riley's here. No Teddy Riley. So, all right, so I do want to get back onto that next, which is this issue of, in the case of you, what you're advocating for right now is, it seems like we're slowly moving towards, in some regard, like the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County are moving towards overall decriminalizing or not penalizing marijuana, but it seems like maybe the state of Georgia might be going a different direction.
Yeah, it's getting the feedback.
Yeah, going on. I bet. Can you explain that one?
Tell me the question again.
It seems like the state of Georgia versus the city of Atlanta when it comes to marijuana. I know, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, how can we do this? Do you have to do it between us?
Yeah, it's got a little echo between you both. Yeah. So we might have to just pause it and just keep the Zoom video going.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll be on Zoom if you guys haven't seen. We'll just
I think Zoom. We could. How can we do this?
Because it's got a little bit of feedback on it.
You know what? Let me see if I can use my headset. And it won't have feedback on.
All right, 1 second. All right. And thank you guys for Zoom for being patient, and thank you guys for Instagram for also being both patient. I see. Maybe that's gonna help. I see somebody mentioned the echo. So.
Bro, I'm telling you. Okay. You were actually telling me. Say something.
Something. I think that was Michelle saying echo, but yeah. Yeah, we'll just have to end the the Instagram live one, and then we'll just focus on Zoom. I'm sorry about that, you guys. But you can, if you click on the link in my bio, it gives you the link for Zoom, and you can just click on and watch Zoom from there. You don't really need an account. You just need to click on that link. It's the link in my bio. All right. All right. All right. Sound better now?
Oh yeah, much better.
Okay.
I like the Instagram one.
I do. I like having both. It's just the feedback.
Maybe we'll have another one. Yeah. That's cool.
All right. So I want to ask you something else regarding that. So right now, where do we stand in Georgia in terms of either decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana?
Georgia has a history of kind of pushing towards legalization. So typically what happens in states in the union, they typically do not jump all the way to recreational use of cannabis. They normally start with what we call medical marijuana use, or what we have in Georgia called low THC oil use. So right now in 2015, Georgia enacted a way where you can get medical cards to get low THC oil licensors and use that. The problem is that you will be breaking the law because you can't produce, distribute, or manufacture marijuana in the state of Georgia. So really dumb law that nobody really gets, because if you were trying to transport low THC oil into the state within the confines of your card, which says that you can have it, you could still be picked up for federal trafficking of marijuana. Again, no sense. So the state legislature tried to correct this in 2019, this past legislative session, with Georgia's HOPE Act. And what Georgia's HOPE Act basically said was that you could finally have manufacturing, dispensing, and production of oil, low THC oil, in the state of Georgia. That's where we're at. We are at the cusp of a medical marijuana state. So we still do not have full legalization of marijuana, or even declassification of marijuana, decriminalization of marijuana. We're still steps away from legalization of marijuana.
Got you. Okay, and so now, one thing you explained to me offline was just this issue of licensing with marijuana. So can you explain what that means, like to get a license, and what does that mean once you gain it?
So House Bill 324, which was passed in the 2019 legislative session, basically said there are going to be 8 licenses in the state of Georgia. 2 of those licenses are going to go to your land grant universities in the state of Georgia. There are only 2 land grant universities. One is the University of Georgia. The other is Fort Valley State University. Those 2 universities have a license within themselves of, again, manufacturing, producing, and dispensing marijuana, all in their own. They can do research with it, which is typically what happens in other states too. Like Louisiana did it with Louisiana State. South Carolina has it with one of their universities. It typically happens with certain universities and states. So they can do research that they know what happens when their citizens enact with marijuana. It's just a typical common practice. There are also 6 other licenses that are supposed to be distributed towards individuals or organizations to, again, manufacture, dispense, and produce low THC oil in the state of Georgia. Those licenses have not been given away right now. There is a commission that has been set up to promulgate the rules and the guidelines for those licenses, but we don't even have the application yet for those licenses. So again, we are pretty far away within the scheme of actually getting to even medical marijuana usage in the state of Georgia. So that's something that people really need to realize is where we are, which is still at the cusp of it. And they need to really be putting pressure on their elected officials and this commission that was set up to make sure that they are getting this done and getting it done as soon as possible. We're lagging behind in states, and that makes sure that Georgia, we have racial disparities when it comes to arrests, and it also has income disparities where markets in California, Colorado, they're making a lot of money while Georgia's lagging behind altogether.
Okay, so I want to ask about that. In regards to California and Colorado, those 2 are places that people bring up as the models of what is being done on the marijuana front. Can you explain what both of those states are and like what makes those different?
Well, those states still have legalization of marijuana
Okay.
altogether. So, but again, it's still within certain confines. Just because it's legalized doesn't mean you can do any and everything with it. Like you can have a gun, but you can't do any and everything you want to do with a gun. So there's still guidelines that are set up with it. The thing that they have though is that they jumped in the game early and realized that they can actually generate huge amounts of cash revenue from taxes on marijuana that shores up their reserves and other things such as propping up more money for education systems, infrastructure, healthcare. This money has been used in society in other ways to make their state better when they normally have budget shortfalls.
Okay. And in the case of Colorado, I know you said there were some issues with that. Can you explain again what that issue was?
So Colorado is an outlier. Colorado was a state that jumped from um, marijuana being illegal to full recreation of marijuana. And what we realized from the data when that originally happened, everybody didn't know the rules, they weren't educated about it. And we actually saw a larger disparity of happening when Black people were arrested at a higher rate once marijuana became legal than what was happening beforehand. Because again, remember the rules, everything doesn't go. If you do not have a license, you still cannot distribute, manufacture, or give away marijuana. And if people don't know that rule, they just keep hearing the line, marijuana is now legal, and they're doing this around the corner or doing whatever, police are still going to pick you up. So they actually saw a rise in the rate of arrests after legalization than they did when legalization was happening. And that's why you have to have such a large educational and advocacy pros to the community about letting them know what's really happening.
Okay. And one thing I want to piggyback on the advocacy part. So what is it something that an everyday resident in Georgia right now can do to even advocate for marijuana?
Well, first, again, listening to your podcast and figuring out what's happening in the state of Georgia when it comes to marijuana or cannabis here. So there are plenty of other groups. Of course, I have to push for the ACLU of Georgia because not only do we do this for free. We keep people up to date on their civil rights and civil liberties when it comes to criminal justice in this. But we've also had to jump into other things such as licensing and everything else because we do not want a disparity when it comes to people getting licenses as well. So listening to some things like your podcast, joining another group, again, ACLU is one of those. If you have not had a conversation with your local state senator or your local state representative, you need to. They need to know your name and they need to know where you stand. If they are not for full legalization of marijuana, then that's something that you need to talk to them about because you can probably find a candidate who will be for that. So that's a voting issue that you need to bring up to them that they will pay attention to. And the reason why is because nobody's paying attention to them for any other things except lobbyists who have a lot of money, who give money away from campaigns, and they have more influence than the people that actually are sending people down to the state legislature.
Okay. And so I want to piggyback on that. So you have done some lobbying in your past. So what does lobbying actually entail?
So lobbying is basically just influence. You are, and anybody can do this. Let's be real about it. I want to get rid of the myth of you have to be a lawyer or something else to be a lobbyist. You don't. In fact, I'm more restrained as a registered lobbyist in the state of Georgia than I would be without it. The reason why I have to register as a lobbyist is because I get paid to be a lobbyist. If you get paid by an organization, you have to register as a lobbyist. If you do not get paid, you can go down there anytime you want, do whatever you want, however you, let me take that back. You can't do anything and everything that you want. But you can go and talk to your state representative or your state senator and tell them how you feel, have talks to them without registering that in the state of Georgia. Why? Because you're their constituent, because you are a citizen of Georgia and you should be able to do that. But basically lobbying is just advocating for your organization or your group. I promulgate policies for the ACLU of Georgia, and I literally give them to representatives and senators about where we stand on issues. So one of the issues we stand on is legalization of marijuana, not just decriminalization, full legalization of marijuana.
All right. And what
And
does
we've
that
been
look
pushing
like?
that for a few years now.
What does full legalization of marijuana look like?
Well, in the ACLU's point of view, and I started off as a policy counsel trying to develop these measures, and then now I'm the political director. So again, fixing racial disparities altogether. So we're talking about Black and brown people who have had um, criminal records due to marijuana charges expunged. And I'm not talking about a record restriction where only certain groups like the government and security or educational people can actually see it. Complete expungement when they erase it, they burn it, they shred it, no digital footprint, anything else. That's part of legalization that we're looking for.
Okay.
Also, a minority portion into this too. So you would have to have a minority preferred business. There's some constitutionality issues that go into that without going too deep into it, but we actually have to make sure that there is a minority participation component within this altogether.
All right.
So
I want you to go deep into what does that mean?
go into what?
The deep about the minority participation component. What does that mean?
So it's kind of like what Maynard Jackson was talking about before with disadvantaged business associations, what we have in the city of Atlanta. You have I don't want to say a carve out or a quota, but based off of the contracts or proposals that you put in, if you are a minority owned business, then you should get a minority owned preference within this realm. Again, you only have 6 licenses that you can go for. And we're talking about people who are raising millions of dollars to say that they can put up large cash sums, produce those farming agencies, those factories, everything else. It costs a lot for this. Minorities are typically out of the game because of that. So not only just the cash, but the education that goes along with that. If you do not have a minority preference portion to it, typically you're not going to have a minority within it.
Okay. And so why would that be important in the case of marijuana?
Well, dealing with the racial disparities, if you are a Black person in the state of Georgia, you are 3 times more likely to be arrested than a white person. This is just data, this is just facts. It's been happening for years right now. And now people are starting to wake up and become aware of it. Why should people who have traditionally dealt with this type of substance have been arrested by it, impacted by families by it? The criminal justice system has impacted families by it. And now that it becomes legal, other organizations or other groups who have not been arrested by it or impacted by it are now being impacted in a positive way of it. That's just not fair. That is not morally equitable at all. There's a lot of wrongs that need to be righted because of this. And one of the ways that you can do that is having a minority preference towards giving out licenses.
Okay. And so I want to ask in terms of licenses, how much have they specified how much it's going to cost right now to get a license or no?
So they put together some guidelines in House Bill 324. Oh, you know what? I have my notes up right here. I don't know if I have that in my notes. I knew this last year like that, but I think it's close to, I forgot. I want to say $1 million for a low classification of a license and 2 million for up there. I wasn't, again, looking at the licenses as much as I was looking at decriminalization of it.
Right. And so with the licenses though, that's just like anything else, like you get a business license. Is that basically just saying like this is your license to even do business in the state of Georgia? Or is that something different?
So a license is basically saying for the production, manufacturing, and dispensing of low THC oil. The
Okay.
way the bill is set up right now is once licenses are given out, you'll have something that does the production and manufacturing, and then medical marijuana is supposed to be dispensed through local pharmacies like CVS or Walgreens. CVS and Walgreens have said they want absolutely nothing to do with this at this time until Georgia can get its act together. So after that, the commission can come back and promulgate rules of saying private industries can now distribute low THC oils. Again, as long as you have a card and you go through all the other guidelines.
Okay. And so that still seems like we're putting like real handcuffs on it overall. and I know you guys have been trying to push for full like decriminalization and full legality of marijuana. If we were to have full legality of marijuana and decriminalization tomorrow, what does that actually look like for people in Georgia? So let's say not just oil, but like, would that open up more? That's like straight up people being able to sell marijuana, or how would that work?
It would. So most systems in the United States have two systems within it. One is still medical marijuana, which is where Georgia's heading to right now, and the other is legalization of marijuana. The medical marijuana is typically a prescription from your doctor saying you have a headache, you have insomnia, or a lot of other ailments. And here's a prescription that I'm writing for you, just like if it was a high ibuprofen or something, other type of issue that you're having. Coming from a doctor that's typically not taxed by the state, and you can get it at a good rate. Then you have legalization, which typically just deals with if you feel like going out and consuming an edible, I don't know, a dot. Like there's several different ways of marijuana classifications that you have out there that full legalization would give to you. But then again, a certain range that the state decides on. So you would kind of really need to figure out, if I have this full legalization, how is that going to be packaged within it? Because full legalization just doesn't mean that you can, well, it does mean that you're going to do whatever you can do, but that's not going to happen because it's still classified as a drug. So you have to figure out which parameters is it going to be within.
Okay, so I want to kind of get closer to that in a second, which is because I see that the little ticker's running out of time. What would it take to get marijuana decriminalized on a national level?
On the national level, it's
Yes.
a good question. You have to have an act of Congress for that to happen. So
Okay.
Congress would have to overturn the laws that are already on the books that deals with, which would hopefully mean that they would include in there people who are already in jail due to marijuana charges are also let out. But yes, you need the House and the Senate to pass laws to have full legalization, and you need a president to sign it. So if you don't have the president to sign it, then you have to go back. You have to have it passed by 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to overrule the president's veto.
Okay, and so I got to ask you then, on the state level of Georgia, uh, do you think it's realistic that we will have marijuana decriminalized and legalized in the state within the next 5 years?
Well, I would put that up to the people. So whenever I tell people, can this happen? Yes, it can happen if the people actually want it to happen. So if you are holding your state representative or your state senator accountable of saying, we need legalization of marijuana here in the state of Georgia, they will do it. And again, if they don't want to do it, vote for the candidate who will do it. Your next governor who comes up, they'll have a lot of say into this too. The next time a governor is up for election is 2022. Make sure this is one of the issues that you bring up of saying, are you for full legalization? Again, not decriminalization, full legalization of marijuana. And that would carry a lot of weight.
Okay, and so now I got to ask then, I have people here, if you guys have any questions for Mr. Bruce, this would be a great time to ask, if no one has any. I don't think they do.
That's
Yeah. So, hold on, I think we do. Okay, we have one. Yeah, I think Erica actually has a. Erica, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey, Erica.
Yep. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Thank you so much for the background information. One of the questions I have, and it just seemed like a random number. How did they arrive at 8 licenses? Like, how did that number even come about?
Erica, great question. So literally 2 years ago, because I was saying that was the 2019 session, the 2018 legislative session, after that was done, they implemented what they called a low THC study committee. And within that study committee, they went around the state of Georgia. So we were in Savannah, Atlanta, I think we were in Macon, and Columbus. And they were hearing from people within the community about what needs that they wanted. Kind of. What they were really hearing from were major marijuana manufacturers and people who had skin in the game who were saying, we want to push for medical marijuana altogether. So within that, they were saying, and this is where you would talk to big lobbyists or producers of marijuana, how many licenses you can have. Because in some states, you have hundreds of licenses for distribution and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
In other states, you have a small amount. So it was in your interest, if you are a large manufacturing firm, to have the lowest amount of competitors. So you have the lowest amount of manufacturers, and you have the lowest amount of licenses out there. But you also have to look at supply and demand within it. There's so much demand for it, you need more people to be able to manufacture, produce it as well. So there was a lot of people or a lot of organizations who were saying, if you give me a license and you give 5 other people a license, that is fine. We can all produce what Georgia's needs are right now. And since not many people have a medical card, there's not that much of a need that you could put in data. But if more people get licenses, or if this becomes legal, of course it's going to skyrocket like we've seen in other states.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that number just seemed kind of arbitrary to me. So thank you for putting in some more context behind that.
It is. It's based off of the study committee's report, and then actually the study committee actually called for more licenses. So that changed once it got down to the legislature,
Interesting.
and they took that away too. Yeah. So you have to literally track the process. That's why I always tell people, voting is the least thing that you can ever do. If you're saying that all you're going to do is vote, you might as well be counting out the process. This type of stuff takes years to develop. And if you're not the one who's at the table, you're going to be the one who's on the plate.
I actually have a follow-up question, kind of related to what you were saying about voting, and obviously it's not just about voting because there's been a lot of conversations in the background. Do you have any prompts or like additional materials or resources that you can point people to so that when we reach out to our representatives, we kind of already have a script?
When it comes to advocating for cannabis legalization?
Yes.
I don't, but you know what? I'm glad you told me that. I will get started on something like that. I plan on actually bringing on a consultant myself so we can actually advocate more into this space, because something that's happening right now within the economics of it, Georgia farmers are hurting. And this isn't just because of COVID-19. This is because of the hurricane that affected Middle and South Georgia years ago, where their pecan trees were completely wiped out. So now their cash crop is gone, and they need something to actually fill that void. Marijuana is one of those type of things. But again, they're advocating for what they want as a farmer, not based off of what the people of Georgia actually do need.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Follow up with me, Erica, on that. Hold me to that, okay?
Yeah,
we need to have a script and everything else. And we're happy to go with you when you talk to your state representative or your state senator about this too, just because we meet them all the time and talk to them about several other issues. Because a lot of times, believe it or not, they may not always tell you the truth. Crazy, right? So we're here to hold them accountable as well, saying this is your constituent or this is somebody who's advocating for this. Let's not BS them. Let's give it to them straight about, are you for this issue and are you not? Because you need to be able to answer to the community that voted for you in this instance. So
yeah, cool.
We actually had a lobbying session on this, I think February 4th this past year. And we'll probably have another lobbying session on this upcoming legislative session, if we have one.
Okay, great.
Cool. Well, thank you, Bruce. If anyone else has any questions for Bruce, this would be a great time for Mr. Bruce. Okay. Well, thank you again, Bruce, and thank you for everyone who tuned in. I'll have this available for you guys on YouTube very shortly. Once again, if you are interested in it, you can always sign up for my newsletter at iamkingwilliams.substack.com. iamkingwilliams.substack.com. Thank you, Chris Bruce and the ACLU for allowing to talk a little bit about marijuana tonight. And also, if you guys are looking to find this on YouTube, the YouTube channel is called the Neighborhood Watch Podcast. So it's on YouTube. You can find it there at the Neighborhood Watch Podcast, or on social media at Watch the Hood on all social media channels. All right.
If I can add one more thing.
Yes.
Voting's June 9th, okay?
Okay.
This is the second time it's been pushed back. Make sure you turn in your application ballot request, and then once you get it, turn in your application, your ballot application.
Okay. Overtime, Bruce, I want to do something with you regarding what's going on with Brian Kemp, if you don't mind. I see.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
All right, you guys.
I'll just tell you up front if I can do it. You want to do it on this, or you want to do it on Instagram?
We'll do it on this one.
Okay.
So 1 second, you guys, and we'll do it overtime. 1 second.